I've got news for you.
Welcome to Citizen View,
where citizens come to talk.
Andy, last time we met, remember this is season 2, we had an idea. And that idea was to pass a piece of legislation.
Well, that piece of legislation is called Suffrage at 17. It's going to give 17-year-old voters in the state of Illinois the chance to nominate candidates for the general election if those 17-year-old voters will be 18 by election day in November.
What a great idea, but Andy, now we got to think about how do we get this through the General Assembly here in Illinois. How do you pass legislation? Not unlike any student out there watching, you got to do your homework. And Andy, the first bit of homework we have to do is we got to find support.
Well, remember, we have a Republican government. That's Republican with a small r, because we have a representative democracy. That's Republican government. So we elect officials who make laws for us. In order for that to work, we need to go out and solicit the support from these officials for this legislative idea. And James Madison, who originally talked about American Republican democracy, wrote all about this in Fed 10.
That's right. It reminds us of Federalist 10, that early document where James Madison was trying to convince the state of New York, which was reluctant to ratify this new Constitution. He said, listen, our new Constitution is establishing a Republican form of government. The people will elect representatives. But be wary of those factions, he said. These were those groups of people that really destroyed earlier republics throughout history. These were true historians thinking back. And so James Madison said, listen, the problem here isn't factions themselves. This is part of nature. You can't get rid of people's wanting to join groups, but you can control their ill influence by competition. Have a large republic. Build a large republic, a pluralistic republic, where all these factions compete. But that reminds us, Andy, that means we're in the game.
Well, it really means that in order to get elected in this country, in order to pass legislation, you can't just rely on one group. You have to build coalitions between multiple groups. So Suffrage at 17, if we're going to get this legislative idea passed, we need to build coalitions of groups. It can't just be young people supporting this. We obviously have to reach out to older people, people who are elected officials. We also have to reach out to both parties, because this isn't just a Democratic idea or a Republican Party idea. We need to build coalitions, and that was all stated in Madison's Federalist 10, and that's what we're working on this week.
Well, let's think this through just a little bit more. So we're saying that elites ultimately don't decide everything. We, the people, get a voice. It's a pluralistic society. But then how do these factions actually get their idea passed through a legislature? You have to build groups and more groups and build coalitions of multiple groups. So not just Suffrage at 17, Andy. We have to start thinking about asking other civics groups. We have to think about maybe joining forces with those groups that want to change the way we register how to vote. If Suffrage at 17 is going to survive and pass through our legislature, it can't just be you and I and a few of our students. We're going to have to build a coalition. Andy, it reminds me that our U.S. Constitution doesn't start with we, the person. No, it's we, the people. And if this idea has any chance of passing, we're going to have to build a coalition, just like James Madison argues in Federalist 10.
Well, this is also, democracy is interactive. It's not just teachers telling you what to do or government officials telling you what to do. It's also soliciting your input. So if you have input on what kind of groups you think would be willing to join us in trying to push our initial efforts in Suffrage at 17,
maybe you're going to be willing to join us.
Make sure you leave some comments here at citizenu.org and give us your input, or give us your name as someone who might volunteer to help build these coalitions.
This has been Citizen View, and we're the two teachers.
No fancy words, no fancy suits.
Plain talk about issues you need to know.
Just in time.